Awesome.
All right, guys. So we got Sterling Chapman on today, and he is a master of the BRRRR strategy, built a really, really huge portfolio for the greater Baton Rouge area. He is one of our elite investors in town, no doubt about it, at the top tier. And we're going to discuss the BRRRR strategy and kind of if or how to pull it off in today's marketplace. We've also got one of my good buddies on, Derek Reeves. He is a builder of all things to do with websites, PPC, lead funnels, CRMs. And so we're going to give him just a couple seconds to he's been working real hard on some products, and I want to give him a chance to say kind of what he's got on the plate here. So what you got, Derek? Let us know.
Yeah, I appreciate it, James. So I started a company called Automations Club, and I help small businesses and entrepreneurs create websites that are completely optimized with like lead intake forms, different things like that, just different ways that we can capture information. On the back end, we have a full-blown CRM that has tons of automation that we can do to communicate through text, email, Facebook Messenger, even direct mail. So there's a lot of different ways that we can capture leads, segment our data in the CRM, and have different marketing plans for different types of lead sources. So if you want to check it out, I just finished my website. It's automationsclub.com. I'll drop that in the chat so y'all can check it out. There's a link to book a discovery call with me. So I kind of go in, we audit the business together and try to find some solutions that we can offer you.
Sweet.
So appreciate it, James.
I could think of a few people who may want to take you up on that. One of them name is Vonnie, and have a conversation at least, and see how you can help with follow up and that lead funnel. So we're going to jump right in, Sterling. And I'll give you just kind of an open floor to just start where you want. I think you kind of know what is interest on my mind with the BRRRR strategy in today's market, but you've also got some other things. I know you started a property management company recently. You've got a construction company. So open floor, kind of give us what you got going on, and then we'll go with some questions from there. We can't hear you.
All right. How about now?
Yep, got you.
All right. So I'm an open book, man. I tell the whole story every time I get in public. So I don't hold anything back. So I made a bunch, and then I lost a bunch, and then I built it back. So I'll take you through the condensed version of that. So when I got started, the first house I bought wasn't a BRRRR. Neither was the second one. And it was because I had no experience, and I was afraid, and I didn't understand. I didn't know how much construction was going to cost. The whole strategy just kind of scared me at the time. So my first two rentals, I saved up $15,000. I put a down payment, and I bought two turnkey rental properties. And then I was completely out of money. And I was like, okay, well, now I can't buy another house for 2 years. So I almost, at the time, I was listening to every Bigger Pockets episode I could get my hands on, listening to every audiobook I could get my hands on. And instead of quitting after my second rental property because I ran out of down payments, I read Braden Turner's book on no or low money down strategies. And from there, I went out and found a couple duplexes next door to each other that were distressed. And I got in touch with the wholesaler that was trying to sell them and got them locked up. I had no way of buying it, and I had no construction knowledge or experience. But I had a friend that flipped houses, and he had investors, private investors, that funded his house flipping. And he had been doing this for a while, so he had experience managing construction. So I said, look, I've run the numbers on this project, and I believe that if you can get your investors to buy it and fix it up, I can refinance it out and pay them everything, pay them their money back plus interest, and give you $50,000 for the whole ordeal. And he was like, oh, that's a great deal. So that's what we did. It didn't go that smooth. I didn't sleep for 6 months during the renovation, wondering if it was going to appraise. I had the bank pull out at the last minute and had to flip to another bank. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of nerves, but it all worked out in the end. And the numbers on that was I bought two duplexes for a total of $190,000. and we spent $60,000 on the renovation, so $30,000 per duplex, $15,000 per unit. And then it appraised, both duplexes together at the time, by the time we finished, appraised for $390,000. So I was able to get an 80% loan from a small local bank, which they cut me a check for $312,000, and I was able to use that money to pay back the private money investors, pay their interest, and pay my buddy the $50,000 for managing the project. And I walked away with $80,000 in equity and $2,000 a month in cash flow. And I was like, this is amazing. I've got to do this over and over again. And from there, I just kind of kept repeating the process. But the difference was, at that point, I had experience. I had basically borrowed my buddy's experience by working with him on a deal, and then I had a showcase of proof of concept to bring to other investors. So I went to some other investors and just borrowed the cash and went and found another house. And I think that next house I BRRRR'd, it was March of 2020 was my first one, and I bought it for, was my first one after the duplexes. And I bought it for 65, and we put right at 20 into it, and it appraised at 130. So we went and did a cash out refinance, and they gave us 103,000. Was able to pull all that money back out, turn around and buy another one.
Yeah,
and,
let's explain. Let's give a brief definition of really what the BRRRR strategy is, and also give us a tip. What were the interest rates at the beginning back then? Yeah,
6.5%.
Yeah.
So so this was pre-COVID. It was pre 3% interest rates. When I started buying properties, I mean, the market was essentially the same as it is today. The only difference in today's market and the market back then is that we were spoiled rotten during COVID and low interest rates. So it's gotten harder to flip houses and to sell houses because there's a disconnect between the value, because people still think their houses, and when I say people, I'm one of them, still think their houses are worth what they were appraised at the lower interest rates. And I always try and explain to people, when it comes, and I know we're on the topic of BRRRR, but we're going into house flipping. I always tell people the value of a house has nothing to do with, it's not that it's a $500,000 house. That house is a $2,000 a month payment, right?
Yes.
And if the interest rate triples, all of a sudden the buyer pool now is much smaller for that. Yeah. And so the price of the house and the interest rates are obviously negatively correlated there. But yeah, it was a very similar environment to the way we did it today. I think that first one, like I said, it was 6.5%. I did another I did 4 that first year, all around 6%. And then
what were the other terms? Like, is that a 5-year adjustable rate mortgage? Is that a 20-year term?
So the way I did it for my portfolio was, what I would do is I would take private money. So I would borrow cash from friends, family, investors, whoever wanted money, and I'd borrow it from them at a fixed interest rate and say, hey, give me X number of dollars and I'll give you X number of dollars back at the end of the year. So I'd go buy the house cash. I'd use the cash to renovate the house. I'd go to a small local bank, and they all typically had the same terms around back then, and they're pretty similar today. A little tighter, a little higher interest rates, and a little tighter on the ARVs that they'll do, but I just went and it was a 20-year AM with a 5-year balloon, and all the small local banks, they'll tell you don't be scared of the 5 years, because they don't want your houses. They're in the banking business. They're not in the property management business. You really got to mess up for the bank to not want to refi that 5-year balloon at the end of it, because they don't want the house. But what I would do is I would stack 4 or 5 of those houses. I would do that 4 or 5 times with the small local banks. And the problem with the small local banks is you're limited by your debt to income. You're limited with your exposure with that particular bank. So, once you get into owing a bank about $1 million, once you get into owing a small local bank about $1 million, they get kind of squirrely. And then they want to start, kind of lowering the LTVs that they'll pay out. They're going to charge a higher rate or maybe shorten the amortization. So in order to continue the process without slowing down, I would actually do a second refinance, and I would refinance it into a debt service coverage ratio type loan.
Yeah.
That has a 30-year fixed rate.
Yes.
So,
Those are the ones that we normally use.
and towards the end, I was cutting out the middleman, and I would just go straight. I would just go straight to my out of town hedge fund lenders, and they would do both of the loans. They would do the bridge loan while I fixed it up, and then filled it with a tenant, and then they would convert it into one of the 30-year DSCR loans.
Yeah, I like that strategy. Pretty good. The 5-year ARM, I mean, it is what it is. If you don't know what it is, and you're listening to this, look into what that means. It's an adjustable rate, and it's a shorter term, 20 years, he's saying. So typically your monthly payment is going to be higher than a 30-year term. So those are important things. And if you can get a good relationship built with a company like Vontive, My Investor Loan, or Dominion, who will do a DSCR loan, and your numbers can work, which they haven't been working recently, because most of those DSCR loans until recently were at anywhere from 8.75 to 9.25%. And
Correct.
it's really hard to BRRRR at that. And let me step back and say, what is the BRRRR? And so, Reagan, if you would put a link in the chat to David Green's book, The BRRRR Strategy from Bigger Pockets. And that will explain very, very clear terms what the BRRRR strategy is. But most of the time when we're talking about the BRRRR strategy, what we care about as investors is getting our cash back out of it so that we can go back and do it again. We're doing a cash out refinance. So that's what we care about. So go ahead, Sterling.
Essentially, the BRRRRs buy, rent, rehab, refinance, repeat, and the whole psychology behind the idea of it is recycling the same capital over and over and over again. So in my example, I used an $80,000 loan to build an $8 million portfolio, and I just used that same money over and over and over again. Because you could go to the bank, and a lot of times when I would do BRRRRs, I would pull out way more than I'd put in. That's not always the best strategy. I've talked to other investors that say, "Oh, no, I'll only pull out what I pull in." You're balancing your cash flow and your equity, right? Yeah. So if you go and you get a house appraised after you've renovated it, and it appraises for higher than you expected, the bank will likely still give you 80% of that higher appraisal. And you're probably going to want to take all that cash. And I did every time. And when you do that, though, what you're doing is you're minimizing your cash flow, because you're over levered if you're taking too much.
Is higher. Your monthly note is higher than
Correct.
It could be. And so your cash flow is shrinking. I'm just trying to make it clear, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that, I mean, there's some different ideologies around it. I've talked to other folks. They're like, I never pull out a penny more than I put in. I just want my money back out. At the time, for me, it was like I was doing these calculations in my head, and I said, okay, well, if I pull out an extra 20,000, that's an extra $100 a month in cash flow. Like, how many months is it going to take me to get that $20,000 back, where I could go do something else with that $20,000 today?
Right.
Now, whether or not that was the right decision, I can't tell you. I can, I can tell you that that I'm sure the folks who pulled out less capital cash flowed better, but the folks who pulled out more capital and had better cash reserves were probably in a safer position when the environment shifted. And to your point, I haven't burned a house this year.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I wanted to ask you that. All right. So you had massive success. So give us an idea of what your portfolio, and because I got a question for you. So give us an
sure.
idea of what your portfolio looks like. And then the question I want to ask is, what happened in the market that caused you to stop burring for a season?
Okay. So what happened was the interest rate skyrocket. So I had this run over a few years where I built a rental portfolio up to 80 units in Baton Rouge.
That's amazing.
Simultaneously, I was syndicating apartment complexes. So I was raising capital and I was buying apartment complexes in other states that had higher growth, population growth demand. And so I was taking some of the additional funds I was pulling out of the BRRRRs and investing alongside my limited partners in my apartment syndications while I was building the 80 unit portfolio. And I was always very much against flipping houses because it always seemed to be very risky to me. However, once I had established that financial base, I felt more comfortable going out and flipping houses because I'd already, through the podcast and through the meetup and just through the networking events, I had established a good solid lead flow. I'd had the same guys doing my BRRRR rehabs and working for me for 3 straight years. I said, there's no reason they can't flip houses. So we ended up getting really heavy into flipping in 2022. And we bought a massive amount of inventory. And then 2023 happened and the interest rates tripled. And I lost tons of money on those flips. And I ended up having to sell a decent portion of that rental portfolio to cover the losses from the flips.
Really?
So, yeah. So of the original 80 units I had, I'm now down to 50. And
Wow.
with understanding that as soon as the rates drop, I could go build the portfolio right back up. I always say, when I was trying to describe the BRRRR strategy to somebody the other day about how, you'll always be able to create value and always be able to build a portfolio once you know how to do it. It's kind of like do you remember those fuzzy pictures that they had in the 90s where it was like a poster on the wall and you looked at it, it looked like a static TV,
right.
But if you stared at it long enough, there was like an actual picture. It was like a solar system or a dinosaur or something. And then once you saw the dinosaur, you could never unsee the dinosaur. Like every time you walk by, you're like, there's a dinosaur. But it took you 20 minutes to figure out, like staring at it, crossing your eyes to see it. But then once you saw it, you could never unsee it. So I was very comfortable unloading some of those rentals because I know once the rates go back down, we can just start the process over again. And we're already heading in that direction. So I anticipate doing a significant number of BRRRRs this year. Last year, like I said, we'd gotten so tangled up with the flips that we spent a lot of resources on that. And now that we had to deplete some of our rentals to cover those losses, we've decided now that the rates are dropping that we're going to start building the portfolio back.
Good. Well, I mean, I commend you for sharing the good, bad, and the ugly about, the truth. I mean, which still 50 doors in Baton Rouge is not a thing to just, laugh at. That's a significant, because the market is not that big. Everybody kind of knows each other. So that's still significant. And, I mean, but to share your story of how you didn't just put your head in the hole like an ostrich, you used what you had available to you to get yourself out of a bind, to prepare yourself for whatever new market conditions are going to come this year. I like that. And tell me what is really exciting you about 2024, where you're going to shift back to the BRRRR strategy? What's fueling that?
What's really exciting for me for 2024 is not only are we going to shift back to the BRRRR strategy for us, but we've formed the property management company and we formed the construction company so that we can be a full service kind of turnkey provider for other investors that want to get BRRRRs but don't know where to start. So like I mentioned, through the networking, you've done the same networking, you've done the same podcast circuits, and been to all the same meetups. Every wholesaler, every deal in town comes across my email, right? So, and I can't buy them all. So for a lot of my property management clients come to me, not just because I'm a good property manager, but they come to me because of my investment experience. They want me to help them grow their portfolio. So the way I do that is I take the deals that I don't buy and forward them to my owners, my customers, and I say, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? And they're like, if you can find financing for it and you can fix it up and you can manage it, I'd love to add it to my portfolio.
Sweet.
So I introduce them to my lenders, I do the rehab, and I manage it for them.
Love it.
So that's how we're helping.
So with your construction company, mostly those guys are working for you and for associates that are other investors. Is that what I'm hearing?
So our currently what we're doing with the construction company is we're working on projects that are 75,000 or less. While I'm taking the commercial builder's license exam. So we're just doing smaller BRRRR projects for ourselves and for other investors. So that's our target market. I don't want to be a home builder. I don't want to be a custom home builder. I don't want to remodel your mom's kitchen and have 6 change orders and her yell, you know what I mean? I want to service the investor.
Love it.
That's one of our competitive advantages has always been affordable labor, and that's something that we're able to pass along to our customers. And so the service that they're going to get from the property management and from the construction is going to be from the lens of an investor who has seen several property managers and several contractors go south. So, I eventually started the property management company for no other reason than I couldn't find another good one.
Right.
And originally, I didn't start it to service other people. When I first started the property management company, it was just to manage my own portfolio. And what I noticed was after the first month, my income was significantly higher and my expenses were significantly lower. And the next month, I noticed the same thing. And then the next month, I noticed the same thing. And so I said, we never saw this with other third-party property managers in the area. There really is a need in the market for quality property management. So that's what we become, is the quality provider of the property management and the affordable provider for the construction for the investor.
Do you plan on keeping the property management company local, or are you going to expand to other markets?
We're going to expand to other markets. We're going to expand the construction and the property management to other markets. So like I said, we do apartment complexes in other markets. The idea is that we'll have two arms to each part of our business. So Crestworth Capital will have, the arm that focuses on raising capital, equity for our apartment syndications, and we also have the private money that we use to do the BRRRRs and the flips with. We'll have the same approach with our construction and our property management company, where we'll do the CapEx, we'll do the renovations for our own apartment syndications, and then we'll also manage those properties. Every single intersection, every single headache I've run into since I've been in this industry comes from trusting other people and not having control of the deal, not having control of the management, not having control of the construction. So that's why we decided to vertically integrate.
I love it.
And since we know that we can do it at a quality level, at an affordable level, we've decided to offer those services to our peers, our other investors in the area.
I love it, man. I agree with that strategy, but I really agree with that strategy to integrate vertically. And so this is what everybody wants to know who is not anywhere near where you are, and they might only have a deal or two, or they even haven't gotten one yet. They all going to want to know. And Jordan asked this question in the chat. I mean, and I'm going to ask it a little bit differently. How do you find, your deals right now? Do you do any direct to seller marketing, first of all? Do you do any
No,
agent outreach?
I don't do any of either one. So I've had my agent that sells my flips bring me maybe 3 to 5 deals, throughout all of those.
Yeah,
Where he just ran across, hey, I just sold this guy this house 6 months ago, and then a hurricane came through and a tree fell through it, and he just decided he wanted to move. Or
right.
the flood in May of 2021. Hey, this guy just bought, I just sold this guy this house, and he decided he just wants to take his insurance money and
Yeah.
move out of state.
You don't know this, but you bought one that I had under contract in that. Yeah.
Uh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a long story, but it worked out because that same agent ended up finding me 2 other deals that I bought. Uh,
Awesome.
so you are mostly then getting your deal. I get your deals from wholesalers, right?
Absolutely. I've
That's what
always done that. We tried the direct mail marketing. We tried the cold callers. We tried a few things, but I'll say this: we didn't pour enough resources into those endeavors consistently.
yeah,
So I will not say that I gave it my all when it came to direct mail marketing, when it came to direct to seller outreach. I just found it to be an expensive endeavor
yeah.
from a marketing perspective, and there was just so many other people that were so good at it and so willing to do it that I found it to be a higher and better use of my time to just let the wholesalers do what they're good at and concentrate on what we're good at.
And so when people come to us for coaching, so we have a coaching program called the 90 Up Challenge. It's a 90-day program to build traction in your business no matter where you are. The first thing I evaluate on that first phone call is like, what is your current resources? Because if you already have some resources, you're not like, living on your mom's couch. Just buy deals from wholesalers and build a portfolio or flip of,
Well,
you,
that was my thing. I'm very glad you brought that point up because everybody asks me for advice, but they always ask for it in this like vanilla, like one size fits all style. Like, hey, what advice do you have for me? I'm like, well, I don't know anything about your talents. I don't know anything about your resources. I don't know anything about your history. You know what I mean? Or what you're good at. For me, when I started doing it, I mean, I was making $175,000 a year at a corporate job, so I didn't need to wholesale. Like a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
folks get into wholesaling to build up a little cash so that they can get into flipping to build up a little cash so that they can start buying rentals.
Yeah, most
And
most people are in that boat.
but I wasn't in that boat.
Right.
I had a corporate salary, and that's how I qualified for the loans, and that's how I did the BRRRRs, and that's how I bought the rentals. So it was just a complete different approach than. Another thing was, I have a finance degree. I have an MBA. I can talk dollars and cents to investors, and it makes sense to them. So a lot of people don't have those resources. They don't
Yeah.
have the authority. They don't have the experience. They don't have the education. And so it's not that they can't do it. I got into real estate because I went to a real estate meetup and found people that couldn't tie their shoes were multimillionaires. Like I got into it because it's simple. I'm just saying the more resources you have disposable to you, the easier it is. But for me, luckily, I was blessed enough or lucky enough or whatever you want to call it to skip that step. I just never had to wholesale because it's a hard gig from what I understand.
It's very hard. And So, but here's the thing that, I'm just trying to get across to anybody who listens in the future as well, is that if you come to us, the first thing we do is we evaluate your resources. Because believe it or not, a lot of people come to us, engineers. We've had several engineers, several accountants, and they come to me and they're like, teach me how to wholesale, James. Teach me how to wholesale. I'm like, you don't need to wholesale. That's not for
Dude,
you. And they're
I
like, well,
was
I heard on YouTube I can make $700,000 a year wholesaling. I'm like, yeah. Well, you can, but let me tell you what those numbers actually look like to get to that number. Like, you ready to, have an entire organization? You ready to go rent an office building? You ready? Because that's what that's going to take, but plus some other things. But if you already have like Sterling and some established finances, and you're at a different level than just kind of getting started out, a strategy for you is not going to be to start out at wholesaling. There's just no, it doesn't make any sense. Look at what he's done. 80 freaking doors over like 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Through the BRRRR strategy. Then he built from there, flipping, then a property management company and a construction company, where now he's all integrated, got it tied together. Plus, I think I was at a meeting where you had just written a book that you were giving out for free at one point.
Yeah,
So you're
you
the man to syndicate, right?
yeah, so you can go to crestworthcapital.com, and I probably need to update. It's been a few years. I think the numbers have probably changed in the market since I originally wrote it. But yeah, you can go download it for free, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about apartment syndication.
So what can we put in the chat for people who want to get in touch with you? Reagan can type it while you're talking.
So anybody can email me, sterling@crestworthcapital.com. You can find me on any of my Facebook pages. I've got a personal Facebook page, and then we've got a Crestworth Capital Facebook page, a Crestworth Property Management, a Crestworth Construction, and then I'm on Instagram, Sterling R. Chapman. You can find me on TikTok and all Twitter, all the other places that they push my content out to.
So he's just told you every way to get in touch with him. If you have a deal that you want to wholesale in the greater Baton Rouge area, and what other area? Any other area?
Right now, we're just working in the greater Baton Rouge area. We do a lot of stuff in Zachary, Baker, Ascension Parish, Livingston Parish. We've done some deals in New Orleans. I don't particularly like driving that far, but I do get a lot of deals sent to me from New Orleans. So if you're in the New Orleans market, and you'd like for me to kind of forward you those projects that are maybe just too far of a drive for me, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah. So reach out to Sterling at Crestworth Capital. If you have deals to sell, I can vouch for Sterling being a legit buyer. I mean, as he's, said, he's, not only did he buy 80 doors for rentals, but he's bought a hell of a bunch of properties to flip, and he's not scared to look at apartment complexes. So, I mean, he's really the buyer you want on your list, in my opinion.
Well,
what are you going to be buying this year, Sterling? That's what everybody's going to want to know.
So I really like and it really just kind of depends on the interest rates and what those are gonna make. But I'm gonna like to stay between the 150 and 250 range. So so in order to BRRRR, I'm talking ARV.
ARV, not purchase price. ARV.
Not purchase price, ARV. So I think in order to cash flow, you're going to need to be closer to 200 until the rates go down significantly. But if I was going to buy to flip, I would probably wouldn't go above 350. So I would say my BRRRR buy box this year is going to be anything with an ARV from 150 to 250, and then my flip box is going to be anything with an ARV between 200 and 350.
So Kelton is in the chat and says that Crestworth is doing a fantastic job on his BRRRRs. He highly recommends your construction company.
Awesome, Kelton. Kelton gives us a ton of work. We really appreciate it.
We got 10 minutes, and I know you and I could talk forever. I hope you'll come back and talk about a different topic soon. But let's make sure Jordan or Shantae or anybody on the live doesn't have a question with the last 10 minutes. Anybody want to ask something? Derek, Kevin, Vonnie?
I know Miss Vonnie can't get on she's in a noisy environment.
Okay,
But
Vonnie says, Sterling, Vonnie says, what do you think about Denham Springs? And what do you mean, Vonnie, as a flip or as a buy and hold? But go ahead, Sterling.
I like Denham Springs. I would, there's just a couple of things that you got to consider. So, flood zones is one thing. You know, when you look at the burst strategy, or flipping or anything, one thing you got to consider in South Louisiana is flood insurance. One thing you got to consider in South Louisiana these days is insurance. Period.
Most of our insurance has tripled this year on almost all our properties, including the house I live in.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same thing. It is painful. So to add flood on top of that could really kill your deal. So be very wary. The first thing I did when I would evaluate deals, when somebody would send me a deal, was I would copy the address and I would paste it into the LSU flood maps.
Yeah.
I had it saved to my phone, and the first thing I would do is make sure it wasn't in a flood zone. They've also got some weird stuff in Livingston Parish where they've issued, like, if you're going to do a certain amount of work, you're going to have to lift this house.
Yep.
That's a letter that I believe is going out to a lot of people in Livingston Parish, but it's actually a rule that you have to be careful of in Baton Rouge as well with the permit office. So I almost got into a lot of trouble over a house that they were trying to say that my rehab was more than 50% of the value of the house, and it wasn't. So we ultimately didn't have to. But if they would have determined that the rehab was going to be more than 50% of the value of the house, they would have forced me to elevate a 3,000 square foot brick on slab house. I don't know how much that costs. That's a little out of my wheelhouse.
Probably $75,000.
I would imagine. So thank God we didn't have to do that, but that's just something to consider and something to take into consideration when you're looking at these things. If you're going to end up dealing with the permit office, or if you're going to end up buying in those flood zone areas, you could potentially get hit with something that is just going to come completely out of left field that could tank your entire deal. I mean,
let me piggyback on that. So Slidell's the same way, Covington, and some areas in New Orleans. So when I get sent wholesale deals, which I'm like Sterling, come to me every day, and if it's a gutted house, the first thing I want to know is, did it flood? When did it flood? Because let's say it flooded in 2021 or 2016 and it's still gutted, almost certainly it's been issued a letter that it has to be raised or would not still be in the marketplace. So if a gutted property comes to you in South Louisiana, you better double check, triple check that you don't have to raise that house before you get started. I'm saying that because I'm in the sub 2 community. I'm in some other communities with like wholesaling with Brent Daniels, and people are buying, or wholesalers are getting deals locked up in, let's say, New Orleans, and then they're selling it to somebody, an investor, let's say in Washington State or California. These people don't know any of these rules. They buy the house. They think they're going to flip it. They think they're going to put $75,000 into it and flip it. And then they buy the house and they end up finding out they've got to spend 50 grand to raise it. And they're screwed.
They're upside down. Yeah.
So whoever listens, pay attention to those gutted houses. There's a reason why they're still sitting on the market. We got 6 more minutes. Anybody else with a question? So again, Derek, my buddy Derek Reeves, he's got so much success in building tools for lead funnels and managing your leads, CRM type of stuff, drip campaigns. Highly recommend that for people who do need to wholesale and who do need to go direct to seller. So let's see if we got, what else can we ask Sterling as far as what are your needs? How can we help you, Sterling? Do you want more properties to work on? Do you want more properties to manage?
I would love more properties to manage, and I would love more construction business. So that's something we're really trying to ramp up right now while we're kind of waiting for the interest rates to settle just a little bit more. But we're pouring a ton of resources. We've hired consultants to build out the company properly. We're getting all the proper licensing, all the proper insurance. So we're dedicated to being the number one property management company in Baton Rouge. So there's a quote, I forget what book it's from, but it's basically there's little to no value in being the second cheapest option in town, but there's a ton of value in being the most expensive option. So that's our approach to property management. Is we do charge 10%, and guess what? There's other companies out there that charge 8%. But I actually had a property manager that was losing $20,000 a month for me one time. And he called me, he goes, Sterling, I'm going to drop your property management fee from 7 down to 6%. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So you're losing 20 grand a month for me and you're going to save me $300. So do me a favor, increase it from 7 to 8 and do a better job.
Love it. Oh man, I love it. So Chris Fodno just came in, a good buddy of mine. He's working his way to leave his W-2, go in flipping full time. So Chris, Sterling at Crestworth Capital .com, right? Sterling at crestworthcapital.com. That's his email address, Chris. He's got a whole construction company and property management. So in the Baton Rouge area, he can help you out on your flips. Chris has got a couple of flips he's about to start in the greater Baton Rouge area.
Hit me up. We would love to help.
All right, guys. So we told Sterling we'd let him go at 12:50. It's 12:47. You got maybe one more chance for a question. Jordan, you got anything for him? No? All right, Sterling. Well, you got 3 minutes to give us your best. What you got in 3 minutes?
Man, I just appreciate you having me on, James. I remember seeing you at our first meetup. I've seen you stay consistent. I've seen you grow. And I remember when Pink Piggy first started and seeing what it was then to what it is today has been quite an impressive growth. So really, really excited to see what you're doing over there. Like I said, we'd love to help. We're not in the coaching business. We just made the decision that, a lot of my peers went coaching when some of them went, service-based business, property management and construction. I decided to go that direction. So, we put out the education for free. The education is not always the answer. I do encourage coaching. I do encourage paying for coaching. Although I've never been paid to coach anybody, I encourage it because of the accountability that comes along with it. Yeah. So there's another quote out there. Brandon Turner likes to use it a lot. And it's like, if information was the answer, we'd all be billionaires with six-pack abs, right? Like, we know how to lose weight. You just eat less and run more. Like, we know how to make money. It's just we don't have the discipline. So hiring a coach that holds you accountable and really spending the money to pay for the coach is actually you buying into taking action. So though I don't do it personally, once James is able to teach you how to effectively do the BRRRR strategy, please come on by and we'd be happy to supply you with leads, fix them up for you, and then manage it for you.
Thank you so much, Sterling, man. It's been great. We'll get you back maybe next quarter or something if we can, and we'll talk about whatever favorite topic you want to talk about at that time. And we'll just go from there, man. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today. And with that, we're gonna end